Um, this would kind of look like going to a coordinators and saying, "Hey, I'm having these repetitive questions asked by clients. I think that we might need to make this resource a little bit more well known or more accessible in our agency." Or clients are coming to me for the same need, and when I sit down, it's still really hard for them. So maybe making this a thing from here on out that we do sit down with them and go through completely, and we don't leave up to the client, which are all things that help the agency as a whole. And I did implement things that are being used at the agency now, which is obviously really, really great. Um, but this next slide is all about how this project kind of met competencies, or what competencies I personally think that I demonstrated. So the first competency is demonstrating ethical and professional behavior. I do think that I demonstrated professional and ethical behavior through um, kind of connecting clients with these resources. I think kind of in obvious ways, but I had to, even if I didn't know maybe exactly what resource they needed, I had to keep my professional identity on, so I would still be trusted by clients. And that was something that I definitely had to learn, and it was a learning curve. Um, Another competency was competency three, advance human rights, economic and environmental justice. So I think that linking clients with resources as a whole kind of does this. I think it's kind of self-explanatory in a way. Another competency was four, engaging in practice-informed research and research-informed practice. So obviously, all of the resources that I was connecting them with were research informed and evidence based. And I was also able to learn the evidence that goes behind these resources and why we use these resources, and kind of like the inner workings of these resources and why they are helpful. Another one was competency six, um, engage with individuals, families, groups, organizations, communities. Um, like I said, I've kind of mentioned how I engaged with communities while linking the clients with the resources. But when it comes to families and groups, I think that I was really able to see that engagement is very important. And what I mean by this is clients like vulnerability and the humanistic approach, opposed to um, acting like you are someone who just knows all the answers and are giving them to the client. So I think this really boils down to personally, I think I learn more through talking with my friends and learning things through that way, opposed to maybe reading a book. So again, really engagement versus spitting out facts to your clients. Um, Competency seven, assess assessment of individuals, families, group organizations, and communities. I was so often able to um, identify needs after building rapport, learning client stories, and saying, "Hey, like I think that this resource that I know about might be a huge help to you and a really good fit with the identities that you have, or the needs that you have." And to piggyback off this, the next competency is competency eight, intervening with individuals, families, groups, and organizations slash communities. Um, so obviously, once the need was identified, intervention was done. Um, I think that the act of I'm sorry, of connecting clients with these resources is an intervention, in a way. The next slide is all about how this project increased student knowledge. Um, so I've kind of mentioned a lot about how through the connecting of the clients to the resource, I was able to learn about the resource. But I'm going to give you a more deeper dive of exactly what I learned with things like SNAP, HUD, all these different vouchers. Um, one of the main things that I learned about, one of the main things that I dealt with was HUD. Um, Before, it was a really abstract idea. I maybe didn't know the most about it. I knew on a base level what it was, but I have created this definition while I was at my agency. These are notes that I've taken, not through research, truly through practice, and through real experience of connecting and going through all of these documentations and knowing exactly what it takes and exactly what they're talking about because I'm having to read all these mile-long paperwork packets to a client, and through that over and over, I was able to learn exactly what they were talking about. Um, so the definition that I personally came away with for HUD, which is just one off the top of my head, I learned about so many different resources and exactly what they are. But the definition that I made was U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, um, is a program that helps with low income families, the elderly, the disabled, um, and helps them afford housing in the private market. The voucher, officially known as a housing choice voucher, pays the difference between the rent and 30% of that house comes adjusted gross income, which is obviously different for every household. The family is responsible for finding their own private rental unit. This is something that I helped them do, especially with my case managements. Um, and helps them find a unit that meets the program standards, and the local public housing agency pays for the subsidy directly to the landlord. Um, so yeah, that is something that I didn't understand at all until I was having to connect these clients with these resources. Also able to just like kind of increase my knowledge about things like learn about the gaps in these agencies through constantly having to connect and navigate these resources with clients. So one story that immediately comes to mind is I'll call her C. C has a very devastating and powerful story. She is severely schizophrenic and is to a point in her life where she's been unmedicated for so long, and her schizophrenia is so severe that she is so far away from the baseline um, that she is not able to sustain a job. Again, like she is just such an permanent altered state of reality that she is not able to. Um, I don't remember exactly which she was covered by now, but again, I've learned so much. So it was either Medicist, MAP,